Hello, my name is Gillian Williamson and I'm HV Planning Manager here at Electricity North West, and we've got a short presentation for you today to introduce our Heatmap tool, which will also include a demo so you can have a see how you can use the tool to achieve some good initial indications of the capacity of our network for any demand that you for any demand or generation connection that you'll be interested in. So the Heatmap tool was launched in January this year, and it's got some really good features which I'm hoping that will be very helpful to you as you consider new connections onto our network. The tool is really good for identifying the closest substations and also to determine the ability to make a connection there. The tool is actually a spreadsheet workbook, but it's accompanied by a series of maps so that you can understand the location of our substations. It's available on our website, and if you Google Electricity North West Heatmap tool, I'm sure it's the first result that you'll find. But just to stress that the Heatmap tool doesn't replace detailed assessments. It's a tool for providing a really useful initial indication of the capability of our networks, but the results are an initial indication, and more detailed information can be obtained by actually submitting a formal application to ourselves. And if the Heatmap tool shows any issues or any constraints on our network, it doesn't mean that we won't be able to accommodate your connection. And what I suggest is that it's in those circumstances that you need to come and talk to our experts by submitting a formal application so that we can apply our more detailed understanding to be able to provide you with an economic and efficient, most economic and most efficient connection point on the network. So the Heatmap tool comprises a workbook which has actually got 6 tabs in it. The first tab is a user guide and network maps, and there's 2 tools in there and also 3 tabs with background data. What I'd like to do now is step you through each of those tabs to give you a greater understanding of what you can find on there. So the first tab is our user guide and network maps. These are embedded PDFs, and this is where you need to go for some of the basic background information. It's a really useful user guide there, so if you've got any queries regarding how to use the Heatmap tool after this webinar, please have a look in there and it may be able to answer your question. It provides a very thorough explanation of the sources and the detailed background to those datas. But there's also 3 maps. The reason for including these is so that you have a geographic understanding of where our substations are. And these 3 graphs, one for the Cumbria region, Lancashire region and the Manchester and Peak region, show you the locations of our primary substations. Those are normally our 33 to 11 or 33 to 6.6 kV substations. Our bulk supply points substations, which are our 132 to 33 kV substations in the main, and also our grid supply points, and these are the points where we connect onto the National Grid Transmission Network, and then normally the 275 or 400 kV to 132 substations. Really useful to have a look at those locational maps to make more sense of some of the later information that we provide in the tools. So now on to the tools. So we have 2 tools, tabs 2 and 3, and one of the tools is dedicated to our 11 and 6.6 kV connections, and the other tool is dedicated to our 33 kV connections. This is where you're going to be able to enter in some very basic information about your requirements and get immediate initial indication of the results. So the information that you're going to require to use these tools are the grid coordinates of the position of the place that you're interested in. Grid coordinates, if you don't have them exactly, there's many applications on the internet which will help you. So for instance, inputting a postcode, they can be easily converted into grid coordinates. You're also going to need to enter the required capacity. So this is the capacity of the connection that you're interested in. That may be 1 MVA, 1 megawatt, or 5 megawatts, or 30 megawatts. You're going to know that. And also the connection type. So that can be either demand or a generation connection. And immediately you're going to get the results. And what the results comprise are the nearest primaries or bulk supply point substations. And these are going to be listed in order of distance, the straight line distance from your particular specified location to the location of the primary or the bulk supply point substation. And for each of those, it's going to list the headroom for the particular type of connection that you're interested in. So if you entered a demand connection, then it's going to provide you indication of the demand headroom. And very approximately, it's going to give you an indication whether or not your proposed connection can be accommodated there, and that's in the form of a red, amber, green indication. More details of the method that we've used, the red, amber, green, provided in the user guide. So those are the two tools. However, a lot of our customers have indicated that they'd really like to get their hands on the raw data so that they can perform their own analysis. And we're including that also in the next two tabs in the workbook. And they are tabs for the primary headroom and the bulk supply headroom. For all of the primaries or all of the bulk supply points, we're going to give you the voltage, the supply group that those are included, the grid coordinates of those particular substations, and also the demand headroom and the generation headroom and the battery storage headroom. These are really well considered values which are based on the actual network capacity, which may be based on the thermal constraints of the network, but also consider the fault levels. They're based on what demand we are already seeing, the existing demand and the existing generation levels, but they also take into consideration accepted demand and generation connections, which is exactly what we need to do when we're considering adding a new connection onto our network. So these two tables are just what you need if you'd like to do your own analysis, perhaps in a different software or perhaps in a mapping environment, so that you can consider the availability on our network compared to what your requirements are. And there's one other, the last tab on there, which again is background information. And this is information on the transmission capacity. And this is directly from National Grid. It's our Appendix G summary. And what this will do is give you a list of the existing generation connections for the 12 grid supply points that we have on our network. It also gives you information on what the thermal and fault level headroom as reported to National Grid to Electricity North West is. There's lots of detailed explanation of that data within the Heatmap tool, so I encourage you to have a look at that. what the Heatmap tool provides is amazing quality data and very much improved accuracy for ourselves. But importantly, it's a monthly refresh rate. Although our network itself, in terms of the network capacity of our equipment, is not changing very rapidly, what is very changeable are the connection acceptances. So it's really important that you're able to benefit from this monthly refresh rate. And we're very keen that you'll be able to check that date when you look at the spreadsheet. So if I now move on to have a look at the tool itself. This is the actual workbook. You can see it's an Excel workbook, and I'm on the first tab that we've just been talking about. So here you can see the user guide, which you can double click on. Also you'll see on the middle left hand side the three icons for the maps. And importantly, you'll also see that we're giving you the date there. So this Heatmap tool was last updated on the 6th of September. We're recording this on the 30th of September, so I'm expecting that we'll be updating this Heatmap tool within the next week or so. Moving on to the tabs. Now, what I'm going to do without breaching any confidentialities is have a look at two existing connections which are in the public domain. And the first one is what I think is rather exciting PV installation within the Electricity Northwest area, and this is Europe's second largest floating reservoir PV. This is 3 megawatts of floating generation, which is in effectively towards the south of the Electricity Northwest patch. And although I don't think it's a very good tourist attraction, I would recommend that you have a look at the YouTube video, which is actually a drone flying over the top of this PV installation, so you can take full appreciation of the beauty of it. Even though this is an existing connection, I'm going to use this as an example to have a look at what the Heatmap tool would tell you about a connection of, for instance, a second Godley reservoir floating PV. And here is all the information that you're going to need to be able to check it in our Heatmap tool. The grid coordinates, the east and the north, are given there. The required capacity is 3 megawatts in this case, and it's an inverter-based generator. So let's have a look at how that would look in our spreadsheet here. So 4 pieces of information to input. So here we go. The easting is 396,500. The northing is 395,300. Remember, it's a 3 megawatt capacity. And the connection type, well, that's a drop down here, and we're going to select generation inverter based. And there you go, instantaneously we see the top 10, the nearest 10 primary substations to the location of this floating reservoir PV installation. And you can see here they're ranging from about 1 kilometre away to 5 kilometres away. Now the first result is showing up as red, and the chances are that that is going to be a fault level restriction. So Newton Primary Station, which is 1.17 kilometres away, is not got the capability of accommodating our floating reservoir. However, at 1.3 kilometres away at High Primary Substation, we're getting the green indication So it looks like we're going to be good to connect there on the basis of capacity. So remember those, that's Newton was a bit closer, but it's not looking good, and Hyde is looking good for us. So going back to our presentation, this is where the maps are going to come in handy for you. I've got a little snip of the map here for our reservoir, and that's shown by the red circle, and you can see Newton is a bit closer, but actually it's on the opposite side of that motorway, so realistically it's not an ideal connection. Hyde, however, just a tiny bit further away, is on the same side of the motorway, and therefore is a good option for us. What I can do now is just show you some of the sort of games that we can play. Perhaps we might say that, well, okay, maybe I can reduce this to 1 megawatt, and then you can see that even Newton primary substation is going to be a good option for us, putting that back to 3. But considering that we might go for a synchronous generator, there you can see that the situation changes dramatically again. And what this is illustrating is how we are considering not only the thermal aspects of this connection, but also the fault level aspects. Synchronous machines have got bigger fault level impact, and we can see that through the results that we're getting. So I'd like to move on to another example, which is this time for a demand connection. And again, this is in the public domain. We're very proud that Electricity North West was a sponsor of Manchester Pride earlier on in the summer. And this was a temporary connection that we needed to look at for the centre of Manchester. Pride was based very close to Piccadilly train station in the Merrifield area this year, and we needed to have a look at providing this connection. Again, there's very little information that we need for using the Heatmap tool to check this out. The east and north coordinates. This instance was 1 megawatt demand capacity, and the Pride required a firm demand connection. So let's have a look at how that plays out in our tool. So again, this time I'm going to put the coordinates in, which is 3, 8, 5 and 3 zeros, and the northern coordinate was 3, 9, 7, 500. Scheme capacity 1 megawatt, and it's not generation this time, it's demand, and we want a firm demand. Chose this example for exactly this reason. In this case, the 10 closest primary substations, we're right in the centre of Manchester where we've got a high density of primary substations. So there's actually 10 very close, with the closest only about 260 metres away, and the 10th furthest away is still only about 1.5 kilometres away. What I'm seeing here is quite a lot of reds. The centre of Manchester is indeed quite heavily loaded, as you would expect. It's a very highly populated area with a very great load density. The reason why I chose this one though is that although the Heatmap tool did indicate that we could have a connection at around about 1.5 kilometres away, actually we did manage to accommodate the Pride at Manchester, central Manchester, which was much more close to the Pride location. So this is an example of where you should please consider the results of the tool to be initial indication. If you come and talk to us and put in an application, we'll do our best to try and get something more efficient for you. Again, we can play tunes on here. We could say if we went for only 0.5 megawatt, how do the results change? Or if we went for a non-firm demand connection, how would the results change? And these are things and scenarios that you'll be able to test out for your own requirements using the Heatmap tool. What I would say is just make sure that when you do download the Heatmap tool from the website, that you always check the date when you're actually using it. So if you download the Heatmap tool today, but you'll come to use it in a month's time, double check that date, because it could be that there's a more up-to-date version on the website available for you. I hope that's been a useful demonstration. Please go to Electricity North West website to have a look for further information on the Heatmap tool there. And if there are any queries, there are an email address there for you to be able to send them through, and we'll do our best to help you. Thank you very much indeed.